Hello and welcome. I am Enigmius, and this is episode 16 of the Ultimate Feed the Beast Reloaded. Today, we're continuing with our automated frame farming gantry. But before we head down and look at the gantry and what I've done to it since the last episode, we're back up here in our facilities doing a little proof of concept build, and you've basically just seen it proven right before your very eyes. I've been reading the forums, getting some comments, things of that nature that suggested to me that maybe getting an automated recharging system for Industrial Craft 2 tools wasn't going to be as easy as some of the other automated systems that we do. So in order to decide for myself, the easiest way to check it out was to do a small scale build like this, where we can just kind of take a look in detail at what's going on without having to try and implement it on something the size of like the frame gantry, or just the size in of itself. It takes extra time to do everything, and then you realize it doesn't work and you've wasted all that time. So we're going to go take a look at this whole thing, as large as it is, and explain exactly maybe where people were getting hung up with the whole recharging thing. Now, this is going to look very similar to all of you, and that's a very fast run speed. Let me just stop that for a second. This is an MFE. Most of you will be familiar with an MFE. It's got a little bit of juice in it, courtesy of the energy crystal that I recharge in my MFSU charging box over here. And it's responsible for charging the electric hose as they empty and need to be recharged. They go into this spot here. That's why we've got the pneumatic tube feeding it in from the top. They go in here, they get recharged. The filter pulls them out when they're full, sends them back into the deployer, which cultivates the dirt block below. And then when the hose is empty, it gets pulled out by this retriever and into the top of the MFE. Very, very simple. I do this with my battery boxes for the blue electricity. You can see there goes the hoe. You can see it's charging. We're almost out of juice, but that's fine. This is just a test build. And then off it goes, a fully charged electric hoe into the deployer. And then just so that you can see it does actually work, instantly is cultivated. So, I mean, as a proof of concept build goes, this is pretty simple. And at the same time, very, very important, because this is one of the things where if it didn't work, it would have had a very substantial impact on how we would have to set up the gantry, because we would have to use stone hose or iron hose or something. We'd have to micromanage that inventory to make those, to make sure there were enough on hand that the gantry never ran out, but also not so many that we ended up with chests full of hose that were going to take a very long time to get used. Now, with this system, the one thing that I did notice is that the hose lose 50 EU per pulse, even if there is nothing to cultivate. So all this time now, it's pulsing onto this area that's already been hoed, and it's still using EU, which for the test was actually pretty handy because it made it so that they discharged faster. But it's something to keep in mind when we're trying to manage the power and how much EU we're putting on the gantry, to be aware that we are going to be running 12 hose that are using 50 EU per pulse. So that's basically it. Now, the thing that I noticed that may have given people some difficulty is if we go here to the retriever that's set to pull the empty electric hose out of the deployer, you can see it says electric hose 30119:26. 26 is the number that changes to reflect the charge on the electric hose. So when it's got more charge, it moves down closer to 1. And as it has less charge, the number increases. Now, the interesting thing is, this is an empty electric hose. You can see it says 0 of 10,000 EU, and the number after the colon is 26. But if we go over here, a brand new electric hose that has never been charged has 30119:27. Once you've charged the hose and begun using it, it will never again go back to 27. It will stop at 26. So if people were trying to set up a system like this with the retriever and they say, well, I need an electric hoe or an electric wrench or whatever they're trying to charge to put in here to show the retriever what an empty tool looks like, it's not going to work. You need to actually charge it up a little bit and then deplete it completely so that it goes to the proper index value, in this case 26, before it will recognize as a proper signal. So that's, I think, where people were running into difficulty with this kind of system, is they were thinking empty is empty and everything should work just fine. We know now that it's not, and having taken that into account, the system works just dandy. So that was cool. Now, let's go take a look at the gantry. We'll see what I've done to it since the first episode, because the last episode we were all basically just focused on the circuitry. And it's raining. And we've got the slime army camping our front door. The bastards. Now you can see, in the last episode, we took a look at the circuitry that was going to be controlling the gantry, which I have moved down here. It's basically exactly the same as what we had upstairs. A few adjustments for the geometry so that it would fit in the space that we had, but in terms of where the redstone current is going, what's happening to it, how everything is behaving, it's exactly the same, with one addition, and that is this lever here, which is the master kill switch, is in the current kill position. It's sending a redstone signal to this timer, stopping it from moving. If we turn it off, the timer resumes, and this timer, or more specifically the pulse created by this timer, is what signals the engines to move and the block breakers and deployers to pulse, right click, do whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing. So we can turn this off, the whole machine is shut down. Much easier than realizing we need to shut it down and having to chase it down and break wires or blocks or whatever to try and get it to stop. So that's really the only change I've made. It's about 95% done. I haven't wired up the frame motors to receive the redstone pulse just yet. I wanted to get it all in place before I started messing around with the situation and risk having the motors move on me when I didn't want them to. So that's really all I have left to do, is finish wiring up the motors. On this side, I have the blue electric power plant, the ender chest full of the rechargeable batteries, the filter pulling the full ones out into the battery boxes, the retriever, you can barely see the bottom side there, pulling the empties back around into the ender chest so that they can go up there and be recharged. Bog standard, every time I need blue electricity out in the field, this is how I set it up. And then what remains to do, probably the largest remaining portion, is finishing off the controls for the deployers here. These are the ones that are going to be using the electric hose. The ones down the middle, also deployers. These are the ones that are going to be planting the seeds. And then the block breakers here, which are going to be harvesting, gathering everything up, the seeds, the wheat, the flax, whatever we happen to plant, which this one's going to take the least amount of work. Now, you'll notice I pulled out the tube frames from this row here. Previously, I put them in place and then I attached the the deployers to them. I realized I was going to have to do something a little bit different down this middle row so that I could easily control what seeds are being fed into each deployer. So if I want to change the configuration of what's being planted, I can do that without having to dig underneath the gantry, stop it and dig underneath or do all kinds of crazy stuff to it. So that's probably the biggest thing that we need to get going. And then we need to take care of the electric hose situation. And then finally this guy, and by the time it's all done, we should have a working auto farmer. So I think we should do this with a time lapse, because otherwise it's going to be really boring. So this is sort of the happy-go-lucky kind of part of the build where everything is freeform. Everything is just designing and planning and saying, okay, based on my understanding of the rules, I have to put this here and this there, and I want it to do this and all this other stuff. But it's not getting to the point where the system starts telling us we did it wrong. Don't worry, it's coming. That part always comes. Everyone who's ever worked with frames knows that part always comes. But we've got the structural elements in place. We've got the filters in place to feed the seeds into the deployers. We've got the wiring in place to send the signals to all of the deployers. And now, with all of the changes, all of the additions done, it's time to lower this guy into the trough and see if it's going to work. So what we do is we set up a temporary motor. I do this a lot with my builds. If I build them above or below where I want them, left, right, wherever, I just take a temporary motor with a partially charged blue electric battery, flip the motor around so that it's contacting one of the frames with the drive face, facing in the direction we want the whole thing to go, stick a battery on the back, stick a lever on the motor itself as soon as we see that it's getting charged. And then once it's all set up very, very simply like this, we pull the lever, and if everything works, the whole thing should go down. But it didn't work. It didn't move. So it would just stare at the lever wondering if maybe it's, going to be intimidated by our gaze and actually going to make things work. And when we find that it's not, we try and fix it, and then we try again. And it doesn't work at all. Take two. Flip that. Oh. Yeah, that's still not working. This is the diagnostics section, because we're not even trying to get it to go side by side. It's normal direction of operation. We're just trying to lower it down into this stupid trough, and it refuses to work. So here's a trick. Flip the motor around and see if it'll move in a different direction, because that'll give you a hint as to what's holding it up. Now it moves. So moving it up, it moved. Trying to move it down, it didn't move. So what that means is something is blocking it from moving down. You can see we flip it around, try and get it to move down again. No. But we can come down here and sort of see what might be holding it. It was actually the motors. It was the lower two motors, the ones that are responsible for actually moving the frame, were blocking it. So now we have to get those squared away to allow it to move. So we can flip the switch and then flip it again, and it moves down. So we've solved that problem. That was sort of one of the major things. And then it becomes a matter of testing. You see, it's still sitting one block above the trough. We want to make sure that it's actually going to move side to side before we lower it all the way down. And you can see the motor is on the left there is working exactly as it should. The motor above it is pushing it to the left, and then it pushes the frame to the left, which resets it back below the motor above it. That's exactly how an inchworm drive is supposed to work. So we've got proof that it finally works the way that we want it to. And now it's just a matter of lowering it down that one last block into the trough and see if it actually works all the way around. Does it cultivate the land? Does it plant the seeds? Does it gather the stuff that's growing? Does it go all the way to the end and wait like it's supposed to, or does it go haywire? What's the story? But the main thing is we've confirmed that everything is moving as it should. So as soon as we stop feeling good about ourselves, we can just put the brakes on it, lower it down as it is now, and finally we get to test. So it's going to start to move any second now, and pulse the deployer with the hose, cultivates the land, and then the whole thing moves again. First row cultivates, second row plants, and all of a sudden, problem. The flax doesn't want to stay in the ground. If you look down the left side, the 4 rows of wheat, they're loving it. They're feeling great. Life is grand. Couldn't be better. The rest, gone to hell. The flax doesn't want to stick into the ground. So now we have to figure out what's wrong. There's a number of different things that could be. One is it could be that the ground isn't moistened. You can see some of the blocks are starting to darken. 2 is that there's still zirconium soil blocks underneath, and maybe that's influencing the flax. Or 3, it could be that we're too close to the flax and it's getting that signal that says, okay, I'm in dirt, the dirt is moist, is there enough room for me to grow? No, pop out of the ground. So that's probably what it is, and we need to go around and check for it before we can continue and determine whether or not the build is a full success or a partial success. You son of a bitch. So after all of that, the gantry is basically done. We could do some cosmetic additions. We could put some covers all over the exposed frames just to make it look a little bit more refined. We could probably encapsulate the nerve center, the brains of the operation over here. That's an option. Are we going to? Probably not. We've got too much other stuff to do. At present, I think the best we can say is that it's a limited success. The gantry itself works. The flax does not. You can see, first of all, the reason why we have the hose in place to continually cultivate every time it passes over for a planting run. It's because this is all stuff done by monsters since it did this first pass, or actually this was the second pass the flax, I don't know. I don't know if it's because we're planting it with only one space above it. But see, I did a little test over here. Yes. Yes, there we go. That's the thing. We need at least 2 spaces, it would appear, from the planting head and the ground, or having the planting head, the deployer on the side, maybe. See, the thing is, I planted both of these on cultivated soil. They're both close enough to water to be moistened. This one with plenty of room is fine. This one, the seeds popped out, and they popped out apparently pretty much right after I left from the looks of things, because they're nowhere to be found. They've despawned. So that appears to be the issue with the flax. Now, the big question, do I care enough to go back and do it all over again? Redo the gantry, do this, do that? No. No, don't. It's just a thing. What I could do, however, is I could flop the seed planting deployers with the cultivating deployers and have it plant on its way back this way, so that the seeds get planted and then the gantry moves over top. Maybe that would give it enough room to grow the way it's supposed to. But then the block breakers are on the wrong side. We'd be passing over it anyways. Who knows? Who knows? All I know is, if I want to plant stuff and not have to babysit it, I can. If I want to plant flax and not have to babysit it, I mean, worst case scenario, I still have my seed bag. Do I even have it on me? I'll bet you I do, somewhere in here. I still have my seed bag full of flax seeds. I could always manually plant this and just let the machine come along and harvest it. That's a thing. I mean, it's not ideal. This is a case where, like I say, the gantry works relative to my understanding at the time I designed it. It was unfortunate that we got this far and realized that it's the flax mechanics that are going to screw us over. So I'm going to call this project done. If I make any adjustments to it, I'll include that in an update video, along with all the other things that I still have to finish and adjust and do all that other stuff for. So, hey, there's at least a whole episode on all the things that we've left 90% done. So I hope this has been entertaining on some level and at least a little bit informative. Got a bit of a better understanding of how the frame system works. We're going to be doing another frame build soon. Not right away, but soon. I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing for our next build, but a little bit of variety is key, and I think if we jump back into a frame build, I'm going to go insane. So if you like the content, hit a like and a fave maybe, because people like those, including me. I appreciate them, but also, if you want to be notified when I add the next video, go ahead and subscribe. That's a good idea too, so thanks for watching, guys, and take care.